Hello and welcome to the India Revival Mission brought to you by Times Network. I'm Nayantara Rai, working from home. Our guest today on India Revival Mission is a unicorn. It became a unicorn, in fact, during the pandemic year of 2020, and it's ending the year by doubling its valuation. So $1 billion towards the start of 2020 and closing 2020 with a valuation of nearly $2 billion. Our guest is Pine Labs, which is rewriting the digital landscape for SMEs as well as Kirana stores. The CEO, Amrish Rau, joining us right here on this edition. Thanks, Amrish, for joining us here. It's the year end. You're joining us all the way from Singapore. Good to have you on the show. It's certainly been a very, very busy year for you. You became the Chief Executive Officer during COVID-19. You've steered Pine Labs through a fantastic growth trajectory from unicorn, now $2 billion. Tell us about the latest investment round, which acts as a testament of sorts also for the growth story of Pine Labs.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. It's actually been a very, very tough year, not just for us, but also the small merchants of India. Footfalls had completely collapsed. We had to come up with new solutions, which was doorstep commerce, offline to online, the entire pay later story. And we are actually happy that this all the work that we did in this year came to a good close, wherein we announced funding led by Lone Pine. Lone Pine was founded by the legendary Stephen Mandel. Quite excited because we've got a very pristine cap table. We've got Sequoia, MasterCard, PayPal, Temasek, and Actis on our cap table, and quite excited to bring along Lone Pine. This is their first private investment in the Indian market.
So can you, we talk about 2020, and like I said, you became a unicorn towards the start. You're ending the year by doubling your valuation. Now, 2020 is a year which has led to acceleration of digitization, accepting digital products, whether you're a merchant or the one who's going to the merchant for business, a consumer, all of that. So you're entering 2021 for sorts on a higher base. Is this kind of growth actually sustainable for Pine Labs?
Yeah, so let me give you three numbers and then you'll understand that these are secular changes which has happened. One, contactless card payment, which used to be about 2% at the start of the year, has now gone to almost 15-17% in all of the card base. So what you can do is just tap your card and the transaction is done. It's an entirely safe transaction. So it's seen significant shift by almost 6x in this year itself. QR-based payments in total, UPI payments in total has now gone to about 2 billion a month. And when it comes to pay later and getting installment-based payments, that market has grown almost 100% year on year. What we have seen is footfalls are definitely down in the offline stores, but what we have seen is the percentage of people using digital payments has increased by almost 3 times from compared to the pre-COVID days. I don't think so. The Indian consumer is going to rush back to cash quite quickly in 2021, especially for purchases. So I think this is a secular change. Demonetization, as we all know, provided the fillip for digital payments. But I think COVID is making people extremely concerned in using cash, and hence digital payments is becoming the right choice. We are also getting to see a very interesting trend where small merchants who had been sitting on the fence, not sure if they want to have a POS terminal for doing digital payment acceptance, they have started to accept this in a big way. In the month of October alone, we digitized 25,000 stores all across the country, and we are seeing that trend continue in November and December.
But this is also a space that you're operating in, Amrish, which has become very competitive in 2020. Yes, you have been at it for years. When I say you, I mean Pine Labs has been at it for years. But now it's a space, for example, that Mukesh Ambani's JioMart wants to be in. It's a space where India's most valuable unicorn, Paytm, is trying to make waves in. We've seen mushrooming of many other fintech startups that want to occupy this space. So it's become very hyper-competitive. You also have the likes of BharatPe and all of that. Market is large enough for all of you?
I think the market varies and the requirement of each player varies. Ours is a very, very tech-focused approach. So the way we look at it is the small merchant is being inundated with various apps and small technology services. That's making his storefront very, very complex. We are completely focusing on digitizing payments and digitizing the commerce on a small store. Quite a few of the players that you mentioned out there, they might be coming in consumer first, or they might be coming in out there with an approach of just deploying a box at a merchant location. Ours is much more of a software first approach. In fact, I would say we continue to have about 60 to 65% market share on the enterprise and mid market of the offline business. The retail segment, the rice seller, that's not the merchant base that we actually go ahead and target. We are targeting what I call as a merchant, which is having a shop, is sitting in a hole in the wall kind of a location, might have an air conditioner. That's the one that we are targeting because they require technology solutions to run their storefront more efficiently.
So, you have raised about what, 75 million to 100 million dollars in the new investment round, which has led to the doubling of Pine Labs valuation in the year to $2 billion. What are you going to use all of this money for? Is it to grow? Is it also just to make sure that you have enough cash in the bank to take on the new competition? I understand that you're leading the market right now, but does it get intimidating sometimes when you know that Geo is coming at you for market share with the likes of Google, Facebook and all behind it? You've got other unicorns in the space as well.
It's a very interesting question. I actually haven't thought about it from a competition standpoint. I've always thought about it in terms of the market opportunity. And I'm being very honest about it. The way I'm looking at it is, I think this wave of digitization is so huge that we really need to double down on driving commerce through small cities of the country. That's one. Second is enabling credit for consumption in the small centers is very, very important with our pay later solution. So we want to continue increasing the outlets at which consumers get access to pay later. That's the second area that we want to focus on. And third is MasterCard is an investor of Pine Labs. We've already made an announcement that we will go to 5 countries with our tech stack in Southeast Asia. That's another area that we are going to invest in going forward. Look, I'm just going to be honest about it. I haven't thought about it from a competition standpoint. We are much more of a tech first company rather than worry about people, who could be deploying just boxes of terminals at a merchant location.
So give me an idea, of how big 2020 was. You told me in percentage numbers, but, can you tell us in absolute numbers as well? Because just for our viewers to also understand the digital wave, the digitization wave that we've seen in this pandemic year of 2020. How many merchants, for example, did you add on? How many more POS terminals did you sell, etc., to merchants?
Sure. So we effectively by December end would have deployed about 180,000 terminals all across the country. And you've got to remember, this includes 2 months which were completely washed out. Even now, there is almost 5, 10, 15% of India still shut because of various COVID-related restrictions. Yet what we are getting to see is digital payments is increasing. If you look at UPI payment transactions, and within that P2M, consumer to merchant transactions, those have gone way ahead of what it used to be before COVID. The month of October almost had 2 billion transactions which happened only on UPI. On card-based payment transaction, I have to tell you, the transactions are slightly lower than the COVID days period. However, contactless in that has actually gone up almost 5 to 6 times. And as I said, getting access to credit at your point of purchase, those transactions have almost gone up 2x of where it used to be before COVID. What we are getting to see, which is very, very interesting, is that consumers are absolutely trying to stay away from cash. And look, I don't have enough information on this, but there is clearly a consumer perception which says cash could be very closely related to spread of COVID and hence I shouldn't touch it. I have no idea if that's true or false, but that's what people tend to believe, and hence people want to use digital payment transactions. One of the things which RBI did recently, and fantastic move, was they actually increased the limit on a contactless transaction from 2,000 to 5,000, and that's been very, very good for us.
Okay, so that's another great trend that you have seen, and of course put to your advantage, Amrish. Now, you were just telling us how MasterCard is an investor in the company, how with the help of MasterCard as well, Pine Labs is executing its overseas expansion plans. So I also want to ask you, what do you see as the future of the likes of MasterCard or even Visa, with digital payments really taking off? And it's a very proud moment for India. We're literally building digital highways that other countries want to adopt. We have some of the best payment gateways in the world. What is the future of the credit card? And remember, you have decided to grow on the back of the like of a MasterCard.
Sure. So, one of the things to know is what NPCI has done is one of the best payments platform anywhere in the world. But what you need to realize out there is this is on the backs of a completely new wave, which is saying that my 16-digit card number is not important. My alias, which is my email address or my mobile number, is really important. And I can move money between one individual to another individual exactly how I would send messages from one person to another person. So really, payments are moving like WhatsApp messages today. And that's what NPCI has enabled. The way I look at it is Visa and MasterCard, while they have been known for being on the card side, is working very hard across many, many markets to replicate a very similar infrastructure, which is beyond card, which is more into alias, which is mobile phone number or email. I would want to think that that network will also start to consolidate around the world. So I do think Visa and Master will move from cards to other networks for payment transactions. The second piece, which is a very big shift which is happening around the world, is this whole space around open banking, where what consumers are saying that I love my bank, but I might not like my bank's interface. And what they're saying is, let me decide what is the interface by which I interact with my bank out there. Now, that's just a completely different mindset, which is separate the bank, separate the app. And if that approach continues, I think there is an opportunity for more network providers to come into it. We've already seen some of the acquisitions which have happened around the world, which is clearly showing that more and more networks are going beyond payments to banking and going into the data space. So this space will continue to become very, very interesting. I was saying this yesterday, 2021, with the kind of changes which is expected in payments, it just feels like a new test match, as if the first ball is about to be bowled. It's just like an amazing feeling looking forward to what 2021 holds when it comes to digital payments in India.
Great. So you're looking at 2021 as a long 5-day test match where we don't know what's going to happen. But Amrish, I've got to also ask you, this sounds so interesting when you say that maybe the new trend is going to be that, okay, I bank with X, but I don't like the interface, so I want to use Y's interface. How is that really going to work? And I know you know all of this stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, Amrish gets the digital payment system. He founded Citrus, sold that for over $100 million, was at PayU, was then the CEO of PayU India, now, of course, at Pine Labs. So I do want to pick your brains and know a little more about that.
So, there are already, so this was something which started off about 2-3 years back, but even in India, there are 4 or 5 banks. What they have done is, effectively, the backend systems which hold your data and hold your transactions and the front end APIs for the front ends have now been released by some of the banks for fintechs to partner with. So what fintechs are doing is fintechs are building out an app-based front end which sits on top of the banking infrastructure out there. So what you could have is a completely different infrastructure which a consumer could use. Let me leave one thought with you out here about this, right? The way a bank looks at a consumer, bank always thinks about deposits first. But the way I see it today is consumers are now going to banks for transaction first. I think there's almost an opportunity to invert the app, which is not a deposit first app, but it is a transaction first app. So I know some of my fintech friends, like my co-founder from Citrus, Jiten, he's actually coming up with a product called Jupiter, which should get released, where the first screen itself is going to be a QR scan screen, and which is basically doing neo-banking related services. So it's completely inverted to what a classic bank looks at it, wherein it's not deposit first, it's transaction first. So I think those trends will continue in 2021 and 2022.
That's something really interesting to watch out for. Now, Amrish, it's no secret that the government, the Modi government, is very gung-ho on the digital payment space. I've seen your Twitter feed. I do know that you've attended meetings with the government, whether it's also the Prime Minister's office or the Niti Aayog, etc. From a regulatory standpoint, what needs to be done to make sure that we see even faster adoption of digital payments? Because right now also there's a systemic issue at hand, an infrastructure issue at hand. Nobody imagined this kind of traffic, and we have seen our banks are struggling with that.
So I think there are two things which come to my mind, right? One, and we actually had the opportunity to present to the Prime Minister of India on this topic. So one of the first things out there is, I think when it comes to KYC, there should be a certain level of standardization which should come about between all the various regulatory bodies. And we as a fintech association have been pushing for this, which says, can we come up with a simpler KYC which could run across various different products? And I think there's a lot of work which is happening on that area, but solving for a single KYC, or even if it's single KYC by, let's say, a financial services regulator, that would go to solve for many, many issues. So that's one thing to solve for. The second thing which I would love to highlight out here is that, today India has been focused on sticker-based QRs, and those sticker-based QRs are making it quite confusing for the consumer and merchant when it comes to payment transactions. Most of the countries around the world where QR has proliferated, when it comes to payments, the transaction is actually initiated by the merchant and the consumer shows the QR. So it's almost a reverse of it. What that does is the merchant gets to see his transaction, is able to reconcile and settle the transaction a lot better instead of today's QR-based, sticker-based transactions which happen today. The reason why sticker-based transactions are proliferating in India is because there is no MDR associated to payment transaction. I think it's very important to bring about very small economics to a payment transaction, which makes life easy for the merchant as well as for the consumer. So bringing back small fees for MDR for payment transaction, I think is a very important step which is pending.
Of course, there's been a long-standing demand. Let's see if anything happens in the union budget in 2021. There's always such a chatter on this issue in the run-up to the union budget. If I could now digress from this a little bit and ask you, Amrish, the Indian market is just so large. I know you're based in Singapore and all of that. It's so large. It's so immense. You're seeing the global giants now wanting to double down on India. And with what all needs to still be done for India's growth story, why is Pine Labs at this juncture also looking at a large overseas play?
So, that's a very interesting question. The way I would put it is the tech stack that we have developed is very, very unique. And again, that's the reason why I very seldom think about competition, because what we've developed is something very unique, which is not just relevant to the Indian market, but also can be taken all across Asia. Let me give you one example. We are the first technology providers in India which have developed an entire tech stack from ground up, wherein a regular NFC Android phone can get converted into a POS. Now, what that could do is, and we're going to be releasing this about 2 weeks' time, what that is going to do is a regular hawker, or, I come from Bombay, a vada pav wala wants to accept a card-based payment, even that can be done without the hawker needing to have a terminal in his shop. He could have an NFC phone, get the card near, transaction is over. Now, if we build this technology here in India, we think we can definitely take it to the Asian markets and the Middle Eastern markets. So that's one. Second is there's a big wave of pay later where consumers are converting transactions into four equal installments or 8 equal installments. And that wave is also starting off in Middle East and Southeast Asia. We pretty much control about 90 to 95% of the Indian market. We want to take that to other international geographies. So this is more a case of if you have the right technology which could be applied to more markets, we should absolutely go there. And that's the reason why you raise money. You don't raise money just to burn. You raise money where you can invest into new markets, new revenues, new products.
So I know you're saying that you don't want to look at competition, you're finding new areas of growth, you're literally growing the market in India and overseas. But the problem then, Amrish, also becomes is when a space becomes competitive, you see a price war of sorts, a lot of illogical, irrational decisions that are taken just for customer acquisition. Has that started happening in this space at all? And do you see that perhaps becoming something that you'll need to tackle in 2021?
Yes, to be fair, in the lower segment of the market, and as I said, the classic gehu chana rice trader and that kind of market, the classic grocer, there is a price war out there, and as I said, there is a price war because there is no technology which that grocer is asking for. All the thing that the grocer is asking for is ये क्रेडिट कार्ड डेबिट कार्ड एक्सेप्ट करना है आप बॉक्स लगा के चले जाइए that is not the market that we are focused on and as soon as there is a little bit of software requirements integration into billing softwares connectivity into 3 or 4 banks pay later that's the time when things become very complex and then I think it is still a very empty market. It's always been a very empty market over the last 10 years and we continue to invest in that market. You also need to remember is we are dead focused into one single area, which is solving for the merchant. Unlike many others where they look at payments and merchant payments, one of the 10, 15, 20 things that they are doing. We play in a very small niche and we are very happy to play in that space.
No, it's not a smaller niche. Being very modest there, Amrish. I'm going to make this my final question. That is 2021. The other thing that's really expected a lot from the tech companies are large IPOs. A lot of startups are talking about that. Unicorns are talking about that. Anything up from Pine Labs in 2021 on the primary market front?
Not yet. I have to say, not yet. However, I think it's time that somebody starts to analyze it and what is right and which market should an IPO happen. But I have to say, in Pine Labs, we haven't got to that stage as yet. But I would want to think that this is something which we would focus on over the next 3 to 6 months' time, but not now for sure.
Okay, so the focus will be on customer acquisition, overseas expansion, growing the market. This is a year where you've added 180,000 merchants. That's the kind of customer acquisition that you have also seen. Amrish, very quickly, because we're running out of time, what is the big message for Pine Labs for the new year?
Well, look, I think India is a country of small traders. I've always believed that is the segment that we have got to empower a lot more. This program is focused on that. I think small businesses need to digitize and need to digitize fast so that they become competitive to the e-commerce companies which are growing at a very fast clip. And we have seen, when you look at a Shopify, when you look at some of the merchants that we have digitized with our solutions out there, we've seen that their sales have shown significant growth. Without digitizing, without investing into payment, without investing into technologies to improve efficiencies, I think the small businesses will struggle. In 2021, I think that piece should get accelerated.
And with that, Amrish, thank you so much for joining us here on the Times Network. Here's wishing you and the entire team at Pine Labs a very happy new year.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to you.